faint, almost imperceptible crackle pulls my attention from the server room's constant hum. It comes from monitor 3, where a swirling nebula of gray and white pixels should not be. I lean forward, my hand brushing the cool metal of the console. My fingers find the familiar cool brass of my key in my pocket. I pull it out, turning it over in my palm, its edges sharp against my skin. The crackle grows, a dry, whispering sound. A fine, almost invisible smudge now blurs the lower right corner of the monitor. It isn't just a smudge. Tiny, dark specks shift within the static, like dust motes caught in a beam of light, but they move with purpose. I hesitate, my finger hovering near the screen, not quite touching. A low, insistent buzz joins the crackle, a different frequency entirely. The pixels on monitor 3 aren't just gray and white anymore. There's a flicker of something darker, almost black, deep within the swirling mass. I try to adjust the contrast dial, but my hand slits, nudging the wrong control. The key in my palm feels suddenly warm, a strange heat against my skin. The smudge expands, a slow, creeping stain across the display. It looks like an insect swarm, but made of pure noise. I step back, bumping a chair, the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet room. The static on the screen seems to respond, growing more agitated. The server room's hum feels different now, less constant, more like a held breath. The crackle intensified, evolving from a random hiss into a rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. Monitor 3's static now seemed to coalesce, the pixels shifting with an unnatural directed movement, too structured to be mere interference. I rubbed the brass key, its cold, smooth edges a familiar weight in my palm, a small comfort against the growing unease. A new, faint hum, barely above the server's drone, emanated from the screen, adding a layer of pressure to the air. The room felt colder, despite the heat from the server racks. I leaned closer, a small hesitation in my movement, trying to decipher the patterns forming on the screen. The pixels weren't just random noise anymore. They began to form crude, blocky shapes, like symbols I almost recognized from old, forgotten schematics. A sound that felt less like electronics and more like a voice trying to break through. I shifted my weight, my boots scraping faintly on the concrete. My fingers tightened on the brass key, a small, involuntary twitch. I reached for the console's power button, my hand hovering, then paused, unsure if cutting power was the right move. The screen flickered, not off, but into a brief, blinding flash of white light, leaving afterimages burned into my vision. For a moment, the room was silent, the hum gone. When my sight cleared, the symbols were gone, replaced by the familiar chaotic static. The rhythmic pulse, however, remained, a steady, unsettling beat. I press closer to the screen. A coldness settles in my chest. The static is no longer random noise. It is a teeming, writhing mass of tiny black specks, each a point of movement. They swirl and pulse, a living current within the digital display. My fingers tighten around the brass key in my pocket, its sharp corner digging into my palm. A wave of nausea washes over me. A single bead of sweat, cold and sharp, traces a path down my temple, dripping onto the console's cool metal, leaving a dark spot. The screen flickers, a brief green flash. I flinch back, my hand brushing the console. The specks on the screen gather, forming a rough shape. It looks like a hand, reaching out. My grip on the key tightens, the metal warm against my skin. A low hum starts from inside the console, a sound I do not know. I hesitate, my gaze fixed on the image. The air around me feels heavier, thick with something. I take a small step back, bumping the chair behind me. The hand on the screen pulses once, a slow, deliberate beat. The sweat on my temple feels colder, a chill spreading. I shift my weight, boots scraping on the floor. The console hums louder, a vibration starting in the metal. The specks on the screen move faster, swirling into a tighter spiral. A faint, sweet scent, like ozone and old flowers, fills the room. I press my free hand against the console, trying to steady. The hand on the screen ripples, almost three-dimensional. The swarm on the screen began to organize, the individual specks forming crude, undulating patterns that seemed to pulse with an alien rhythm. They weren't just moving, they were communicating. A low, insistent buzzing, distinctly separate from the server hum, now clearly emanated from the monitor. I pulled the brass key from my pocket, its weight suddenly oppressive, turning it over and over in my clammy hand, unable to tear my eyes from the screen. A new hairline crack, thin as a spider silk, materialized on the monitor's plastic bezel, directly beneath the swarming pixels. My fingers twitched, a faint tremor running through them. I almost reached for the crack, but stopped myself. The patterns on the display shifted, forming a series of sharp, angular symbols I didn't recognize. My eyes felt heavy, but I forced them to focus on the screen. The buzzing grew louder, a vibration starting in the floor beneath my worn boots. I gripped the brass key tighter, its cold metal pressing into my palm. My gaze flickered to the power button, then back to the screen. Another crack branched from the first, spiderwebbing across the plastic. The air around the monitor felt strangely warm, almost humid. One of the symbols on the screen seemed to glow brighter, pulsing in time with the growing hum. I took a half step back, bumping my knee against the server rack. The sound of the impact seemed to echo too long in the quiet room. I felt a faint pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache beginning to form. The crack reached the edge of the display, then seemed to disappear into the glass itself. The buzzing now felt like it was inside my head, a constant low thrum. The brass key felt heavier, almost pulling my hand down. The symbols on the screen began to rotate slowly, each one twisting into a new, impossible shape. I could feel the hum in my teeth. Point. The buzzing intensifies, no longer confined to the monitor. It echoes faintly from the walls around me, a chorus of tiny, unseen voices. The patterns on the screen resolve further, complex geometric shapes forming and dissolving with dizzying speed. It's a language I can't comprehend, but feel deep in my bones. I shift my weight, the brass key in my hand pressing into my palm. It feels unnervingly warm, almost vibrating in sync with the room's pervasive hum. A flicker of movement catches my eye. Mark stands by the door, his back to me. When he turns, his eyes are rolled back. A wide, unnatural smile stretches his face. "Don't let the hum settle," he whispers, his voice flat. Then his expression snaps back to normal, a quick blink, and he's gone. I hesitate, my fingers tightening around the key. The stain beside the monitor, dark like a crushed fly, now pulses with a faint, iridescent glow. I reach out, my fingertip brushing the desk near its edge. The surface feels slick, not wet, but strangely smooth. The screen flickers, the geometric shapes twisting into something sharper, more angular. A low thrum vibrates through the floor, a new layer beneath the buzzing. I try to focus on the patterns, searching for a sequence, a break. My gaze drifts to the key again, its warmth growing. I almost drop it, a sudden jolt running up my arm. The hum in the walls seems to respond. Growing louder, closer, pressing in. I need to act, but the screen offers no clear path, only more questions. The stain on the desk spreads slightly, a tiny tendril reaching for the monitor base. A faint ripple runs across the monitor's surface, catching my eye. I watch the small dark dots. They aren't just moving on the glass, I realize with a slow, weary understanding. They distort the image, pushing against the surface from within the screen itself. My fingers tighten around the brass key I hold, its sharp edges digging into my palm. It's a desperate attempt to anchor myself to something solid. The screen gives a soft, almost imperceptible groan, a sound I feel more than hear. One dot darker than the others presses harder, a focused point of pressure. A tiny pinprick fissure appears on the glass, precisely where the dot seems to have pushed the hardest. I lean closer, my head tilting slightly, my breath held. The crack doesn't immediately spread, but the dot itself, it seems to pulse now. A slow, rhythmic beat visible through the new damage. I hesitate, my hand hovering near the monitor. A wrong move waiting to happen. The air around the monitor feels distinctly colder, a subtle shift. The dot pulses again, and the fissure seems to deepen, a tiny spiderweb beginning to form from the pinprick. This isn't just a visual glitch, I know. Something is trying to get out. My grip on the brass key tightens further, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of my palm. The screen flickers once, a brief distortion of the entire image, then stabilizes. The pulsing dot remains, a new, unsettling focal point, its rhythm now slightly faster. A shimmering, oily haze now visibly emanates from the monitor, accompanied by a low, persistent chittering that replaces the earlier buzzing. The static isn't just on the screen anymore. A faint, gritty residue now coats the console surface directly beneath it. I instinctively rub the brass key against my thumb, seeking familiarity, but feel a strange, almost imperceptible gritty texture on its surface. When I pull my thumb away, a small, dark smear, like powdered charcoal, is left behind. I hold the key still, watching the dark mark on my skin. This wasn't there a moment ago. The chittering grows louder, a dry, insect-like sound that seems to vibrate through the console itself, making the metal hum faintly. I shift my weight, a slight tremor running through the floor beneath my boots. The haze on the screen thickens, swirling into faint, almost imperceptible patterns, like currents in dark water. I reach out, my fingers hovering just above the gritty console surface. A tiny spark, almost invisible, jumps from the screen to my fingertip. I flinch back, pulling my hand away sharply. The brass key feels heavier in my palm, its familiar weight now carrying an unwelcome grit. I try to wipe the residue from my thumb on my trousers, but it only smears further, a stubborn stain. The chittering now feels closer, as if something is moving just behind the screen, within the haze, waiting. Faint, acrid scent, like burnt oil, now mixes with the stale air. I press the key harder into my palm, the grit digging in. The chittering grows into a cacophony of tiny clicks and rustles, overwhelming the server hum. The air thickens with a strange, metallic scent, mixed with something organic like damp earth and decay. My monitor is a swirling vortex of black, chitinous forms. I see them undeniably crawling on the desk surface, a living tide spilling from the screen. I try to pocket the brass key, but it snags on the fabric. Tiny, fleeting movements brush against my hand, like countless unseen legs. I hesitate, pulling my fingers back slightly, a small tremor running through my arm. A microscopic insect leg, black and segmented, is caught in the seam of my pocket. It twitches once, a faint pressure against my thumb, a small, sharp point. The key slips further, almost falling from my grasp. I adjust my grip, trying to dislodge the leg without looking directly at the tiny appendage. The crawling sound intensifies, a dry whisper across the laminate. A new wave of form spills over the keyboard, covering the keys completely. I pull my hand away quickly, leaving the key half in, half out of the pocket. A small mistake. The metallic scent sharpens, making my eyes sting. I step back, bumping against the server rack behind me, the vibration humming through my spine. The chittering follows, a living sound clinging to the air, seeming to gather around my feet. I feel a faint tickle on my ankle. I shift my weight, trying to ignore it, but the sensation persists. The forms on the desk begin to coalesce, forming a darker, larger mass. The screen flickers, showing only static for a moment, then returns to the swirling vortex. I reach for the keyboard, then pull my hand back, seeing the dark mass pulse. The insects are undeniable now, pouring from the monitor in a black, undulating tide. They spread across the desk, a living carpet rapidly advancing towards me. The patterns they formed earlier seem like a mocking invitation, a buzzing promise of engulfment. I instinctively clench my fist around the brass key, its cold weight a small anchor. I raise my arm to shield my face, a slight hesitation in my movement. The swarm brushes against my exposed skin. 1,000 tiny pressures. I feel a burning sensation immediately. A faint red welt appears on my forearm where the swarm made contact, hot and stinging. The insects continue their flow, some now crawling onto my sleeve, their tiny legs a faint tickle. I try to pull my arm back slowly, but the movement feels sluggish, almost stuck. The buzzing grows louder, a low hum that vibrates through the desk and up my arm, making my teeth ache. I notice a small, dark stain spreading on the monitor screen where they emerge, like oil bleeding into water. The air around me feels thick, heavy with their presence, making it hard to draw a full breath. I shift my weight, preparing to stand, but my legs feel rooted to the floor. The key in my hand feels suddenly heavier, a small comfort against the creeping tide that now reaches the edge of the desk. I consider pushing the monitor away, but my fingers twitch, refusing to obey. The swarm pauses for a moment, a collective shudder, before surging forward again. The brass key lies on the desk, glinting under the harsh overhead light. My fingers twitch, reaching for it, then pull back. The fine black dust around it feels wrong, like ash that shouldn't exist. I trace the spiderweb cracks on the monitor screen with a fingertip. They are deep, permanent, radiating from the center where the empty feed now glows. The screen feels cold despite the warmth of the glass. I lean closer, trying to see if the cracks go into the display or just sit on the surface. A shadow falls over the desk. I look up. Mark stands beside me, his usual cheerful face slack. His eyes are rolled back, showing only white, and a wide, unnatural smile stretches his lips. He doesn't blink. "The silence is a gift," he whispers, his voice flat and hollow. "But every gift has a price. Don't touch the dust." His smile widens further, then his eyes snap back to normal. He blinks, looking confused. "Everything all right, TVERO? You look a bit pale." He glances at the monitor. "Huh, screen's cracked. Must have been a power surge." He shrugs, then walks away, humming a tuneless song. I stare at the dust again, then at the key. My hand hovers, a slight tremor running through my arm. The warning echoes in my mind. I hesitate, then push the key gently with a pen, sliding it away from the black particles. The empty monitor feed seems to watch me. The cracks feel like a new map etched into the world.